Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Happy Tuesday. What's happening? What's happening, everybody? How's summer going, Callow? Good?
Yeah, summer's going great. I went to Warp Tour over the weekend. So that was a reminder that I'm not young anymore over
Can you
those two
tell the
days.
part where they don't reveal when the bands go on now? Like as if that's a smart move in 2025 to let it be a surprise when the actual like what the order of the lineup actually is?
Yeah, so they've decided because Warp Tour went away for what, like 7 years, I think, 7, 8 years, something like that. Brought it
Yeah.
back. It's only here, Orlando, and Long Beach. There's only 3 dates for it all. But they decided they are not posting the bands on their respective days or their times until the morning of. So, so you have to basically. Well, what I find funny though is it is still the internet, so you're just waiting for one person at like 11 o'clock to post the photo, and then everybody plans their day anyways. I like understand they want to be nostalgic, but all I was in a holding pattern over the weekend, and it didn't really serve its purpose. Is all I'm gonna say. I'll vent about that.
It's 2025, guys. Like, listen, at my age, that I can't do those anymore, or I can only do a piece of them. So I'll pay the full price ticket, but there's a piece of it I want to see. You got to tell me when it is. I don't I don't have time for guessing when I'm going to go and actually see the band I want to see. I can't do that anymore.
What I will say is this: is like Warp Tour was and still is about you find bands that you've never heard before or you're not familiar with, right? But what I'll say is this: what I think they should have done, because there's 5 stages, right? I thought what they should have done was say, hey, here's your schedule until like 2 o'clock. Plan accordingly. And if you want to get there to see any of these guys, go. But then you kind of know who's going to be in the second half of the day. You just don't know how to plan it. That's what I would have done because, like, for my personal reference, my favorite band is the Wonder Years. They're from up in Philly. They're punk rock. They're fantastic. I love what they stand for. I'm waiting literally in my apartment, like, let's wait for the schedule to come. They're playing at 1:30. So I had to bolt like right then when the schedule dropped because I wanted a good spot to go see them. So
Okay.
I thought like first half of the day should have been something that was announced. That way you're not scrambling to go run down there essentially.
Real quick, I think these are from the dreams come true part of life. We have a deal with IMP at the radio station.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear my voice actually doing some spots for them because they're giving me some tickets to go to some shows. So
Yep.
I love this relationship has finally materialized. Should have happened years and years and years ago, but I'm pumped. I'm pumped. They sent me that, and I'm like, I will do anything for those guys. I love them, so I'm very excited to be part of that. All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say I also was voicing some spots, and I was like, "This is the dream for me," because you know how many concerts I go to. Like, I think I've been to 5 days of concerts in the last 3 weeks. So yeah, this this is one of my favorite partnerships.
We love working with you guys. We love working with you guys. You'll hear the first one I did is for the Struts, who they very kindly gave me some tickets to go see next month. I think I can go see it. I haven't even looked at the schedule if it actually lands. I hope it doesn't actually land on a Commanders preseason game. I didn't even look, but I wanted to go see them. All right. Anyway, let's get into some of the stuff that's been going on, which obviously we're in the dead period, so we're going to have to find things, but I do want to start with the headliney thing that came out of our division, which was Micah Parsons did an interview over the weekend with Clarence Hill, who's covered the Cowboys forever. And the takeaway quote was, he said out loud, every day you wait to pay me is just costing you money. And he's not wrong. And there's two things in this piece, and I forgot about this one part that I still find really interesting that I don't really totally understand. But Micah Parsons admits that he and Jerry Jones have discussed the framework of a new deal. He's in the last year of his contract. And I think this is all leading to he's not going anywhere. Like, he's just basically saying, I don't know what you're waiting for either. You want me. I want to stay here. You know what the price is. I don't know what you're waiting for, because whoever the next Myles Garrett is going to be a problem for you when it comes to talking to me about all of this. The price just goes up. I'm not getting any worse. I'm going into my prime. I'm the potentially best defensive player in the NFL. What are you waiting for? And they've done this a few times. We've made fun of them for the way that they've handled star contracts through the years. CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, twice, that they wait too long to deal with their stars. and it's their own goals. They end up paying guys too much, or they get leveraged, or it puts them in a difficult situation. All of these decisions, these big deal decisions, this is what really defects your cap. These are the ones, like, you have to get it done with them. You can't let them go, but the way you structure them is the most important part of the whole thing. So he says he's costing them money. And the biggest takeaway line for me, for when in this piece that I forgot about, was Jerry Jones said this at the owners meeting. He was asked about, have you talked to Micah's agent? And he laughed it off as if, like, I don't need to talk to the agents anymore. I get the deals done. Don't worry about it. And I read this, and Parsons in the piece with Clarence Hill says that the framework of the deal has not been discussed with his agent, that he's still saying the longer you wait, it's going to cost you more. But why isn't Jerry Jones talking to the agents anymore? What gave him the belief that he's just going to get the deals done with the players when that almost never happens unless they are the self-represented? There are a few of them. Bobby Wagner's one of them. There are a few self-represented guys, but very, very few. And ones on this level at this stage of their career, they should never not have a good agent in the room with them dealing with these deals. And Parsons has one. So I'd love to hear the reasoning why, if they're trying to get a deal done, nothing's been formally presented to his agent yet.
Yeah, I don't really understand this one. Like, does Jerry think he's going to pull the fast one and get Micah to sign some contract, that his agent won't be in the room for? Like, Micah doesn't strike me as the type. One. Two, are you trying to pull a fast one and then piss him off? Because that's what happens when you have a guy sign a bad contract like that. And honestly, the last part here, though, is Mike is right overall, though. Just get it done. They did this last year with Dak and with CeeDee Lamb, and it literally did was cost them money. They waited until the last possible second for both of them, and it costed him millions of dollars. You could have just gotten it done early in the offseason. You would have been fine.
They waited out CeeDee Lamb after Jamar Chase got his deal.
Right.
They should have beat Jamar Chase to the market by a mile. He was going to get, if the Bengals gave it to him, which they did, if he got his deal. If he did, because with that team, it's an if. It's always an if. But they did give it to him, and they gave him the biggest contract ever for any receiver. All it did was up the price for everybody.
You're thinking of Jefferson because Chase got paid this year. You're thinking of Jefferson last year, right?
Chase got paid this year. Right.
Yeah. It was Jefferson. It was Jefferson they were waiting.
Right.
Yeah.
They should have beat Jefferson to market. They should have never allowed that to get to market first. But this is what they're doing, and it's a mistake. It's obviously a humongous mistake. All right. I don't think he's going anywhere. I mean, that's the other craziest part of the whole thing. Is this is one of those where you go, what are you waiting for? Why don't you just get it done? The sooner the better, honestly. Like, this should have been done when Myles Garrett was complaining about his contract. You could have done this and preempted that. Instead, you let him get the money, which I thought was funny that he came out and said he should get every penny that he's worth because he backed up Parsons. And he backed it up by saying, I know how he works. So he basically said, it isn't just to play on the field. I know how he maintains his body. I know what it means to him. You need to give him the money. And with Dallas, again, when was the last time one of their stars went anywhere else? Right. They don't. Right, they don't. Like, they may get into these awkward standoffs. They do feel like own goals. Like, I don't know why they keep waiting to do this. Yet in the end, they always end up re-signing these guys. They just pay too much for them, or they get leveraged because the contracts change every day that goes by, which is always for us it's good for us. We've talked about this a lot the last couple of years. Like, Jerry's lost his fastball. Like, that is like clear in the way he communicates. Like, he's not Biden. Like, he hasn't lost it. But there's some word salad that goes on some of these interviews now. And then the timing of these things don't make a tremendous amount of sense. He's openly stated, I don't want to let anything go. There's no Kamala in the Dallas Cowboys organization. He won't turn it over to anybody. He just won't do it. And he's kind of own-goaling himself. And I think the Cowboys fans know this. But this is good for us because the more these seemingly little mistakes add up in the end. They always do, which is why, like, I like how careful we are. The Eagles are too. They're very careful about what they do with everybody. If there's a mistake, the Eagles are incredible at moving on from it. We haven't been around, our group hasn't been around long enough to know what they'll do when a mistake is made. So we'll find out. But I do know our group has been extraordinarily careful about who they dole the money out to and to what length they do it, which is probably what the holdup is with McLaurin more than anything, is that they're being as careful as possible without hopefully ticking him off, which the reporting is semi trying to hint that he's a little ticked off about everything. But I have no concern that he's not going to get it done, Peters. Like, I think they're going to. It's just the question of, is it going to fall in line with what McLaurin wants, or is it going to be a little more in line with the I think the careful nature by which they're crafting all of their deals, which, push comes to shove at some point, you've got to pay a guy what he wants at some point. I just don't know what McLaurin wants, but they're trying to be careful. The Cowboys are kind of doing this a little backwards, where you have an undisputed, this isn't McLaurin where he's 30 and you have to question where in the rankings is he and how long do you think he can keep this play up? Micah Parsons in his mid-20s and might be the best defensive player in the NFL. Sorry, guys, you got to pay him. Every day, he's right. Every day you wait, the price just goes up for him. And so I think he's right. I don't understand. These are the own goals. I don't understand this at all, what they're doing.
I mean, really what it also boils down to as well is, Micah comes out and says that, but also remember Jerry came out like months ago and said, like, I don't even know who his agent is. Remember he said that,
right.
And everybody was like, what are you doing? The own goals are also happening on stuff that, like, you shouldn't have it happen. Like, I don't know if you saw what happened with the Nats this weekend with what Davey Martinez said.
Oh, we're going to get to that. I've actually
stepped in it a little bit.
We're doing a baseball segment today because I did see that, and I do want to talk about that.
But it's the same vibe of like, okay, even if things aren't going perfectly and you want to say something, it doesn't mean you have to say it out loud, because then it's just going to cause a you-know-what storm. And that's what's happening with Jerry and with what he's saying sometimes with these agents and these players. He's a very vocal owner. People pay attention to what he says. Granted, I think everyone pays attention to what all owners say at this point, but him specifically, why are you stirring the pot? There's no reason for you to stir the pot. It's just bringing up this drama, which no one needs. And to be frank, like the Cowboy, like I wouldn't say it's the Cowboys brand. I would just say the NFL in general. No one's really above each other anymore. Like, guys just want to get paid. They don't care where it's at.
That's right.
At this point. Like, I think there are some exceptions to some bad organizations, of course, but those bad organizations usually aren't paying. They usually go hand in hand. Like, just because you're the Cowboys still doesn't mean you can just fire off the cuff anymore either. I think that's where I've landed with Jerry now too, is I get it. You want to, go on radio stations after games and stuff, have at it. But like, there are things like this where I'm asking, why are you even saying that type of stuff? There's nothing that's going to help coming from that.
We're in a different space. Like I think, I'm not to suggest that playing for the Cowboys still isn't a big deal. It is.
No, exactly.
It carries a tremendous amount of weight for playing with a brand. Same thing will happen in the NBA. Playing for the Lakers or the Knicks is a big deal. Playing for the Celtics is a big deal. It's a big deal. But I think things have changed because of access to all of the teams. And in the NFL, what they've done is an amazing job of profiling everybody. And like Adam Silver said this, and I pointed it out when he got on the set and people were kind of asking him about two, quote, small market teams making the NBA finals and what that means. And I will be interested to see what the ratings bear out for that. But like, it's turned out to be a very good series. These two teams have had some of the best series of the playoffs. The rest of it's been a dud. Like all the big market teams have had bad dud. This has been a very good series. It seems to be going out with a whimper, especially if Halliburton's hurt. But like, they've had a very good series here, competitive series, more than I think most of us, including myself, thought it would be, just looking at both of the teams. And Adam Silver said on the set, if this was Packers versus Steelers, you'd be celebrating that this was happening. Why? Because the NFL across the board is covered. Every team is covered. People don't ignore Buffalo because it's Buffalo. They look at Buffalo and they go, that's a true contender, and they cover them and you get to know them. The NBA doesn't have this. This has been largely a complaint of just the coverage of the teams. And there's been infighting from the inside the NBA crew with the ESPN crew where it's all Knicks Lakers talk. It's never about anybody else. The Lakers were by far not close, even remotely close to one of the most competitive teams over the last couple of years. And the Knicks have surprisingly a little bit better than people thought they were. And so this comes off as a surprise. If all you're going to do is talk about all these other teams, then the teams who end up getting there, and it shouldn't be a surprise because Oklahoma City had the best record of like everybody the entire season. They had the best record, and they're simply ignored. This is in light of what we're talking about, where it's like in the NFL, guys just want to get paid. It is more. It's probably a more prime destination to play for a marquee team like the Cowboys, but it doesn't matter any longer. If you can be in the right place, you will get covered. Honestly, your story will be told. The second Tom Brady goes to Tampa Bay has an influx of coverage on them because there's an assumption they're going to be good and everybody gets to know Tampa Bay. It doesn't matter that they are a less covered franchise. It changes the second they become an it factor. Oklahoma City is not being treated this way because ESPN and others aren't treating them that way. And that's a problem of the NBA. I know that's kind of sidetracked the conversation of where we are, but since you brought it up, when I've heard all these complaints, I don't think it's been vocalized correctly. Like there's a lot like LeBron, the way he complains about it sounds like he just sounds miffed. And it always circles back to how he's covered and how he's not treated as the GOAT, which is, I think, the wrong thing to talk about here. But it's the right thing to talk about that if you're surprised that Indiana and Oklahoma City are in the finals in any way, or you don't think you know anything about their players, that's actually a problem with the coverage of the league. There's only 30 teams. It's not like there's 150 teams. These teams came out of nowhere. There's only 30. It's the NBA. Why don't we know who these people are when they're two of the best teams? The NFL doesn't have this issue. They've never had this issue. Everybody knows about everybody. And when somebody's good, they're treated honestly and they're profiled honestly.
Yeah, no, I would say that's what I mean. I think the profile of all the NFL teams is closer than we think. I think that's what yes. Like you're getting at there. Whereas in the NBA, it is clear cut. There's a group of teams that are talked about. And I've also talked about this too, though, like because of the way the NFL is talked about, and you're saying it as well, that players are covered fairly honestly, especially if you're really good, right? Like yes. everyone talks about you. You know, you'll eventually end up somewhere, and there's legitimate discussions on your play. You and I talked, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago, how, because the Pacers are in the finals against OKC, that behind closed doors, there's probably going to be legitimate conversations of who do we get in here that just plays hard now? Because both of these teams play really hard. But Stephen A is not going to talk about that. No. The First Taker is not going to talk about how like the makeup of the NBA maybe could shift because of these finals. Nobody's going to talk about that. They're going to talk about where's Kevin Durant, going to end up during the finals, by the way. Like They're going to talk about all of that. So it's completely different. And that's what I'm getting at with Jerry here is there's no reason for you to bring up the drama. Everyone knows Micah Parsons is good. If you don't sign him, someone else will. Also, we've seen the numbers. We know what the contract should be. There's really nothing you're going to say to change anything to go about the situation. I
think also largely, and this is just kind of pervasive throughout the sport, and I've said this as someone who likes the NBA, I think the product has gotten worse in the regular season, not so much in the playoffs. And I'm never worried about the playoffs. These guys try. This playoff season has been a dud, but their performance in the regular season, their decision to sit out back-to-backs, openly state that they don't care if they play in these games. The teams are complicit in all of this. They really don't care about their All-Star weekend anymore. Like they don't even barely try in it. Like it's just pervasive. Because why? I mean, partially is the media cycle just talks about the upper tier stories of who's upset, who wants to go where, who like it's never about the games. Like it's very rare that they're ever breaking down the games. And I saw something the other day where it was like LeBron James was on with Steve Nash and they did some episode where they were talking X's and O's. He and JJ Redick were doing that for a while there before Redick became the coach of the Lakers. And they were openly making fun of people saying they would never do a show about X's and O's because nobody pays attention to it. Like the interesting part about coverage of the NBA, listen, I don't question Stephen A. Smith's acumen for what people want. The reality is this is apparently what people want. They're just talking top level. This is where people are going. Who's mad at who? And it has nothing to do with who's playing what, which then turns into him playing solitaire during the NBA finals because nobody cares. Nobody cares. And He didn't even he wasn't even embarrassed by it. He tweeted it, was like, I don't even care if you know that I was doing that, because nobody cares about the games, which that's the NBA's biggest problem then. And you know what? It's a little bit of they made their own bed here with the way they treat the regular season. Nobody does care. Nobody is talking about who's playing this defense or that defense or this. Everybody's talking about the top line, almost sophomoric, who likes who and who doesn't like who and who's going where and where's Woj. It's just that's what their league has become. It's become gossip. The whole it's soap opera digest. It's just gossip now. The games are secondary to all the gossip. Not in the NFL. In the NFL, the gossip of the offseason matters, but the games really matter, and people watch them. They literally watch them. So everybody on some level, if you're a fan, knows what you're talking about. You can't fool the fans. You could fool the fans about what's going on in the NBA because nobody's paying attention to a lot of these teams, including the teams in the finals, not in the NFL. By week 8, everybody knows who everybody is, and there's no fooling anybody anymore because people are literally sitting there and literally watching the games.
Well, and on top of all of that, in the NFL, there's no one actively tanking either. There are multiple franchises actively tanking in the NBA too.
There are teams now at the trade deadline that are moving away from people when they realize their season goes wrong. And there is an example this year. The Dolphins did it a few years ago where they were bad. And this year, watch the Saints. I'm a little concerned about what they're throwing out there right now because it does read like they're not going to be competitive. So we'll see.
Yeah, but that still takes until what? Week 6, 7, 8?
That's right.
So you still have to play out a chunk of the season. You still have to play the games. Also, there is something to be said. The games still matter down the stretch in the NFL. I know in 2023, I was hate watching, hoping that we would lose so we would get a higher pick. It's rare that I do that, but we needed a quarterback really badly. And when the Jets made that kick, I was very happy. So there's also incentive to watch even when your team isn't good because the players change up so much. Whereas in the NBA, look at what happened with the Wizards. They were actively tanking against terrible teams. Remember, they lost by 60 to the Pacers in the last couple weeks of the season. And guess what? It paid off for them. They didn't even get a top 3 pick out of it. So, this is the other part here, too. It's the NBA also has to tell me, why do I keep watching if my team is terrible and they're not getting better by playing terrible? I have no reason to pay attention to it right now.
That's right. Let's see. This one came out, too. Shocker. The Bengals and Trey Hendrickson are talking again. The chasm feels pretty deep. The Micah thing feels like it's going to get worked out. Micah's just saying what everyone else is saying to Jerry. What are you waiting for? Let's just get this done. Hendrickson's different. I don't think the Bengals want to pay him market value. So what are they going to get done? And there is a truism here. At some point, they go, you don't want to play for $25 million? You actually want to sit out at 30 plus years old and miss a year and not take that money? And they're right. Because he will show up. The question is, what will appease him enough? And maybe it's, we're going to up your pay to this number, and then you're going to be a free agent after this year. I think that maybe, or we're going to restrict you in some way, but we're going to allow a trade to occur if we can't get a deal done with you throughout the season. That's what I think this is going to play out. I don't think they're going to end up giving him a long-term deal because they don't want to. So what's the answer? Up his pay now and tell him you're going to get your freedom after this season. That seems to be the only answer to me.
Yeah, and remember, it's not even $25 million. He's only making $16 million or something.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Give him the raise that makes him happy for a year and allows him to hit the open market next year. That's how I would look at it if I were them.
Yeah, and look, this is what happens too. Hendrickson played this masterfully because we've talked about it. The Bengals don't like paying their players. Yes, they paid both their wide receivers this offseason, but for the most part, they talk about how much business is booming with Joe Burrow, and they don't like signing a million free agents, and they're known as being notoriously cheap for the last 50, 60 years, whatever. He played it perfectly by saying, literally at Radio Row in the Super Bowl, would love to play here. I just want a new contract, and if it's not here, I think they should trade me. I'm giving them plenty of runway to do this. And the Bengals didn't do anything with it. Hendrickson is the good guy here. And I feel like the fire has been turned up on the Bengals here because they're going, what else did you want your player to do? He respectfully asked for a contract, wanted to be traded if you didn't give him that. You didn't do that. Now what do you want to do? I'm with you. I think a 1-year deal, and then you put one of those, you can't franchise tag me, next year. You give him one of those contracts.
Yeah.
And that could get it done. I would do that if I was Hendrickson at this point, if they're not going to trade him.
One other thing I wanted to get to real quick, and it's on the Commanders, which was Jeremy Fowler did I talked to a bunch of executives anonymously. I love when Mike Sando and Ben Standig do this. I think it's like their best work when they put this stuff out because they have all this access and they get the truth telling from them when they do it anonymously. And Jeremy Fowler's is much shorter. There's only a few quotes in each one, but I thought one was very interesting about the Commanders where he asked about moves of the offseason around the league. And one of them was about Debo and Laremy Tunsil. And this is what was written about it. He said this: while teams we spoke to had mixed reviews on Debo Samuel's trade due to the perceptions of a declining skill set, most were all in on Tunsil. The Commanders gave up 4 picks, blah, blah, blah. While Tunsil is an imperfect player, he struggles with penalties, and the Houston Texans offensive line struggled in 2024. He's on the short list at a premier position. One AFC scout said, he's still a top 3 tackle for me, and anything you can do to protect Jaden Daniels and load up while he's on his rookie deal is smart. They gave up a little more than I'd like, but I trust Adam Peters that he knows what he's doing here. Added an NFL coordinator on Tunsil. This is an incredible quote. Dude is still as good as anyone. Honestly, I think he just gets bored and he loses focus sometimes, but I'm guessing he'll be highly motivated in Washington when he's among the very best. So that is a heck of a quote because listen, anytime you acquire somebody of this level, right? And his level is consistently Pro Bowl or better, all pro. There's always a concern, a little bit of a concern. Why would a team walk away from that? Because remember, the team who walked away from that also has a young, budding Pro Bowl quarterback on it that thinks they're going to win their division every year and potentially win Super Bowls with a young coach and a young group, dynamic on their defense. Like thinks they're going to become something like that. Why would you walk away from an all-pro tackle? And that always concerns me. But that one's interesting because last year was weird for them. They got off to a bad start. I don't know if they just couldn't handle the hype. CJ Stroud had what appeared to be the sophomore slump, which has been lumped over here to Jaden Daniels because he had this. He wasn't bad, but he certainly wasn't what he was in his rookie year. And their offensive line was bad across the board. They couldn't really run the ball. There was a lot wrong down there. That's an interesting quote just to say, I think he got bored. And now that he's gone somewhere else, he won't be, hopefully, bored again. I would love to ask him that question. Someone said watching you, they thought you just got bored last year. Is there any truth to that? That like you just needed a change of scenery because you needed to go somewhere else?
I mean, look at his 2 markets that he's played in, Miami and Houston. Those are 2 markets. I would say Miami's really laid back. I would say Houston's kind of in the middle, but I don't know. That fan base seems pretty good. But it's not here. Neither one of those places is here. And so I think, I don't know, maybe he gets that first taste, that first home game of a home crowd that's going crazy, what Jaden Daniels and how electric he is. Maybe that does help motivate him. I would say this too. Did you happen to see his post on social media over the last, I think it was this week at some point?
I saw it, and it's the best thing that ever happened to Linnell, by the way. I like milk that for all it's worth that he actually used your voice in a diss track. Don't take it personally.
Correct.
Like
well,
the greatest thing that's ever happened. Like this is why I'm not in that world where I go after people like that. So my voice being used that way would almost never happen. He did. All the complaints about Tunsil, whether it was him or others, when he didn't show up for the OTA stuff, I'm like, okay, guys, like you haven't seen him yet. You have no idea what, like you better watch what you say here. And then he uses this. So for him, sir, congratulations. You just had the best thing that's ever happened to you from a media career standpoint, because a lot of people know who you are today that didn't know who you were like as of a week ago.
But what I thought was interesting about that is like, here's the guy that apparently wasn't even in town, has a clip from a show in town, is using it as motivation as he does the, you know how it is. You're in the best shape of your life in June when you're posting those videos. And I just kind of thought that doesn't seem like a guy I'm worried about if he's posting stuff like that. Yeah. And he showed up during the mandatory stuff. You and I are pretty rational about this. So when he didn't show up and we had heard from Houston people, he always does this. I was never concerned. But the fact that he is motivating himself by doing that a little bit, I'm all right with that. So
I'm not worried about him. Like the first time he dropped the workout video with no disses in it was in the second OTA on the day they had the open practice, which was, I said, this is not a coincidence. He's putting this out because he heard it the first time and he's putting it out there. Guys, I'm in really good shape. I know what I'm doing. Get off my lawn is really what it was. And I said that on the air. I go, I'm not worried about him. Like, that's not a coincidence when you put that out that day. And then, of course, a week later, he put this thing out. And to Linnell, congratulations. You just you just entered the media cycle. I don't know if you enjoy it or not. You should, because this is what you like. If this is what you want to do for a living, this is a way to get into that cycle. So congratulations. You've been used that way. He heard you. Your voice was important enough to be used there. That's good.
The only thing I didn't like was Linnell did comment on his Instagram that like it wasn't personal and it's all good. And I was like, nah, man, you got to stand on that opinion. Stand on that, dude. No, you can't do that. You can't back it up like that.
Off.
Come on, man.
This is where this is where you find out when they push back and they go, I heard you. Right. Are you gonna step up and say I meant exactly what I said?
That's when you say, see you week one. Let's see how you look week one. So I would just say, Linnell, stand on your business, man, if you're gonna have those opinions.
I may revisit Debo, but I don't want to get into the dumb video shade again because I already did this a week ago and I know it lasted through the weekend because people are bored. And but that piece also said people are mixed on him. I think that's fair to say people are mixed. Let me see if he is the guy from a couple. I'm not worried about Tunsil. Let's see if he's the guy from a couple of years ago. That's a fair criticism, I think, to ask, because things did go sideways last year for him. So we'll see. I don't want to get into the dumb video, to which I can't believe how many texts I got from people, and they were asking me, do I think he's out of shape or fat? And I go, and especially from some of them that were there at practice, and I had to write back and go, you saw him? Do you think he's fat? And they'd write back, no. And I go, there's your answer.
Right. Right.
If you came out and saw him, then what do you think? Like, you were standing there looking at him. What do you think he looked like? It was ridiculous.
This goes both ways too. Once again, talk to me in week one. Talk to me in a couple of months. These guys have a lot of time to get ready again. I'm not
ridiculous.
Let me know when he suits up. And if he looks fat when he suits up, even then I'm not really gonna, comment on that.
He balloons before we get to training camp. I will say something about it, but now he looks fine to me. Right. So I don't, and there were a few that came from people who had watched practice, and I'm like, why are you asking me this? You saw him. Like what do you think's wrong with him? Nothing.
Right.
All right, we'll be right back. Ray wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about what's going on with RFK. So a little bit has changed over the last few days. The mayor put the bill that we introduced into the budget. So it's not a standalone thing. And the hope was that this would get passed along with her budget recommendation. So I don't know. Politics are over my skis, or the machinations between the mayor and the city council. I leave that to Mark Seagraves and Tom Sherman and Sherwood and Eric Flack and others like that who actually cover this and would know. So I don't know how more or less likely it would for it to go through in this form. But then last week, Mark Seagraves got kicked out of some meeting, and he had heard that they were pulling the RFK language out of the bill. And then Phil Mendelson, the county chair, said that wasn't the case of what was going on. But it does sound like now, because a couple of the council members put out videos, including one that I thought was very descriptive from one of the council members as to why they might not vote on it in the budget, which then got the mayor to respond and say, the time is not now to do something like this. You're making a humongous mistake by doing this. So I don't know, man. This is starting to sound like this is not going particularly well. Mendelson says that the stadium deal is, quote, protected and fully available. And he said they're not doing this to try to just delay. The mayor came out and said, don't put out some fake deadline, because that's not going to go very well. And she's trying to insist by pressuring them that we have to do this now, that the commanders would be very upset if they don't. and that it is possible that they would go back to Maryland, and most likely, and try to get a deal done. I don't know how true any of all this stuff is. Mendelson described it as saying that they're quote unquote furious about any kind of delay, if you would even call it a delay, is really not being truthful to what's going on here. And that the Commanders' deadline themselves to get the money funded to move forward with the project is not exactly when the mayor says that it is. Still, it's 2025. They want this up by 2030, not only potentially to get the stadium ready for the team, but the Women's World Cup will be coming, and they want to be one of the host cities, and this stadium would definitively be one of the host stadiums and probably have the championship in it if they were to have it. And then, of course, sooner you get it up, sooner we get in front of Raj, sooner we potentially get a Super Bowl. All of those types of things come into play. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know what has to happen here. I will say, though, that this does feel like more than a hiccup. And while the mayor might be going a little too far, saying you've got to get this done right now, I also agree with her on the if you don't and you leave it hanging out there and you don't set an actual specific deadline to when you are going to vote on this, the team might get a little wonky and might think about doing something else. And then what are we going to do with RFK? It's going to be a mess.
It's funny you're bringing up RFK too, because I saw at Warped Tour over the weekend, Less Than Jake, who I'm sure you know, they've been around for like years and years and years and years. This was at the RFK grounds, and they looked over and they went, wow, look at what they've done with the place. Looks great. Like just frying what has happened to RFK, which I found amazing because someone was like, yeah, why aren't we playing inside there? And it was like, have you seen the place? Like, it was an amazing exchange of what happened there. I'm with the mayor here. I think they just need to start getting this one done because you just want the steps to start here. We've talked about it for years and years and years where the delay with this stadium isn't actually going to be about the build. It's going to be about the environmental impact. It's going to be about taking down the old site. It's going to be getting all of these permits approved. It's going to take longer than a normal stadium once it starts. And as you just said, there are major events that they want to be ready to go for. I also think, like, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong here. I think the mayor's urgency is also going, we were promised the NFL draft and possibly a Super Bowl when this thing is really pushed through. Until you push it through, they're not officially going to be announced, or Raj could pull it back too. I think that's what she's getting at here. I think she's a little, frantic to say, hey, we promised the NFL we'd be doing this. They promised us a couple things in exchange.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and make good on that because we're going to get some major economic boom out of this once you get it done.
Yeah. Here are the quotes that I think stand out. I'm reading this off of WTOP. The mayor said this: if they don't reach this agreement by what was a July 15th deadline initially. She said there's specific timelines and that the uncertainty created by the council will leave a big avenue for another jurisdiction to meet their timeline, Maryland. She's saying they could go back to Westmore, and then wrote this: now is not the time for some imaginary deadline into the future that nobody knows what it is. The time is now to act. Mendelson said he met with the team and he made it clear that July 15th is off the table as that date was not set by the council and the members knew nothing about it. Westmore's group is saying nothing at this point. Mendelson said it's not close to characterize anything from the team as furious. Bowser says they're outraged by this. The team just put out a very placid statement that said we're prepared to work with the council to make this happen. The council, this is Mendelson now, on the team's 2030 timeline of having the stadium ready. The council will move forward quickly to analyze the mayor's terms and improve the deal where possible for taxpayers and approve a new football stadium. Any suggestions to the contrary are simply false. So for him to say it that way, to me, actually makes me believe that this is still going to happen. The question is when now, and does the team, or maybe the NFL, you might be right about that, push back and say, guys, this deal is on the table as is up to this point because we want to start this timeline to have this ready by this point in time. And if you can't come to an agreement with us, we will turn to somebody else to see, can they do it? And then you're going to lose out. How real of a threat that is, because everyone knows that they want to go back to that RFK site, that's a big question. but that's the game of chicken I don't think anybody should be playing. The team has openly said we want to go back there. The mayor wants them there, and the council is saying, we'll get this done. We just want to do due diligence. And the mayor is saying, don't take so much time doing the due diligence. Get it done now. Prioritize this so we can get it done so nobody gets angry at a later date. This does feel like it's a game of chicken, and I do hope that nobody crashes. That's all.
I would say this too. I think the threat of Maryland is real too, because if you're Bowser, you don't just say that to say that. And I think if you're Josh Harris now too, if you're Josh Harris, you're going, I have the franchise quarterback of this team now, and I would really like him to be playing in a new stadium by the time that new contract kicks in. Like, the economics here are at work here. And to quote the Bengals, when you have a franchise quarterback, business is booming. Well, business is already booming for them 1 year into Jaden Daniels. If you're Josh Harris, you're going, I'm not wasting any more time on this stadium BS anymore. And I think you give DC a normal timeline, but if they drag their feet any more than like an extra 6 months or something like that, I'm going to Westmore and kind of just seeing what you got there.
I think 6 months is too long. I think the mayor is saying, all right, you want to close this deadline by another month, go ahead. But, like, you better set that deadline before people get real squirrely.
Right. Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. We'll see. All right. Let me take a quick break. Brad watch the show. HB at 6:30, the Sports Capital. All right. Welcome back. Aforementioned Nationals. As you know, I don't do a ton of baseball segments anymore. The Nationals don't really warrant a lot of them, even though they have a couple of young players that are exciting to watch. Yet, still, I think the losing streak's at 9 now.
Yep.
They just lost to the Rockies, who are historically one of the worst teams in the history of the game to this point.
Yep.
And things have gone sideways. And listen, I'm not surprised. They don't have a competitive team, and there's ups and downs, and the stretches can be bad on a bad team. But over the weekend, their manager said a couple of things that felt a little harsh. And one of them was, don't blame the coaches for what we're doing. We're the ones working our butts off every single day. It's not our fault. At some point, the players need to go out there, pitch, hit, field, etc., and you can't blame us for that, which, considering how protective he is of the players through the years, was surprising, actually, to hear him. It felt almost off the cuff, and it almost felt off the record, but it wasn't. So I was surprised to hear that come out of his mouth, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, and then he was followed up, because you could talk with the manager before games as well. It was followed up on Sunday, and he was like, I said, don't put the blame on the coaches. I didn't say I blamed the players. And I'm like, Davey, there's only one other party here. So
right.
It's either that or you're actually pointing to Rizzo or ownership, which if that was the case, okay. But like, you aren't the type to do that. Look, I have mixed feelings about Davey Martinez. He's the only manager to have a World Series ring here in DC. I've said it before too. If you're going to have a team that's not going to compete and you want to just keep them on board, I'm all about that. Just, it is what it is. We kind of have just known what it is. That being said, I've never been impressed by Davey and his managerial stuff. He's been great at the vibes and keeping the team together. Clearly 2018 or 2019 was a lot of vibes that he instilled in that clubhouse, having dance parties and everything like that.
Yeah.
But the second you're the one not protecting the player's peace anymore, I have to ask the question, what are we doing here anymore? Because, as I said, I'm not impressed by your managerial prowess. And now all of a sudden, you don't even really want to protect your players. Are you checked out? Like, do you want to be here anymore? Because I feel like that's a valid question after this.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me. That's how it read. I don't want to like we're fighting a fight we can't win. That's how it sounded to me.
Right.
Unless he says otherwise. And listen, he's been dealt a hand that he can't win with. I know that.
Correct.
And so, the ownership is not paying for players. There was a report over the weekend that they might be buyers at the deadline, which felt a little crazy to me. One, it's out of character. Two, why would you buy for this season? There's no reason to. Unless you're pulling the Adam Peters Marchand thing, we're like, we're getting it for now, but we're also getting it for next year. But it was also, we're getting it for now because we're good.
Right.
Had the season gone a different way, we might not have done something like this. The Nationals are not going to be making a run to the World Series. I don't care who they acquired. So I didn't believe that report. And then there's, so they're not buyers. they're not spending on players. You need to do that if you really want to be competitive in this sport. And then I think largely, and I don't know who this falls on, the coaching staff or the development staff, they're not developing a lot of great players on this team. Whose fault is that? I don't know. Someone would have to tell me. So it's not a great hand that he's been dealt here. That said, he's not getting the most out of them. I mean, like, so that's, and if you want to complain about, so like, if I wanted to shoot back at him a little bit, I could say, look, like, I get it. My expectations are where they need to be. I think you guys are middling at best because of the roster that's out there. So I don't blame you for not competing for a world championship right now. However, explain to me the players that give me the locked-in team that every day is in the fight, as you like to put it. Show me the team that is developing these players and they're getting better and better and better. I don't see it. There's been a couple of examples of guys that have gone the wrong way here. So I don't know, man. Like, I don't know how much of that I should blame on you, but I will say this. It did feel very checked out to hear it because there are some very good young players on this team, but they are not consistently competitive. And right now they're in a rut. So how much do I point to the manager and say that's on you?
Well, and like the other part here is it's also who they lost to. Like, you get swept by the Mets, fine, but you also only scored a couple of runs in the whole span of that series. You get swept by the Marlins, that's pretty weak, especially at home. And that seems to be like what the breaking point was here. And then I'm going into yesterday going, anything less than a 3 or 4 win series against the Rockies, we got questions. And what happens last night?
Historically bad.
What happens last night? Kyle Finnegan, who hadn't given up a home run all season, gives up 2. Like, that's when you know your season's just going sideways in a way that you can't predict. Like I said, though, Davey is usually the protector of vibes, and he's not doing it. And I just, and this unfortunately, I kind of went on my show on a rant about it yesterday. This unfortunately is a little bit Commanders football team Redskins. It does start at the top. Like, we knew that they weren't going to be good. We knew that the acquisitions were not going to blow anybody away. And here we are in the middle of the season, and it's not like Mark Lerner is the one striking out in the 9th inning or giving up a home run in the 9th inning. But the vibes have just not been good with this franchise for the last 6 years, essentially.
That's right.
And that's where we're at this point. And I don't want to, like I said, go all in on that, but it's hard not to when ownership clearly isn't spending a lot of money. Rizzo's doing what he can. The Ken Rosenthal thing comes out, a couple weeks ago. Like, it's just spiraling on them, and it's hard to blame Davey too much for it because I just know there's a lot of extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, the whole we're going to be deadline buyers report to me was silly. And I think it was a response to Ken Rosenthal outing them as one of the worst run teams. So they were like, we'll float something out there that we're actually looking to get somebody that they're not looking to get. Like, you're not going to go acquire some ace that costs a ton of money because you're not going to pay them and you're not vying for a championship this year. That doesn't even make any sense. It was like a floated report to calm down the waters. Like, oh, we are trying to be competitive. I don't think so. But to hear this manager throw his hands up in June was kind of like, I don't know, man. Like, and I'm with you. I'm like, I get it. You got a bad hand here, but do you not want to be here? Because I think you need to just say that, because that's how it felt and read to me. And considering you do have a group of very good, very young, but very good players on this team, that's actually the last thing I want to hear out of the manager. Well, it's on them. Yeah, you got some 22-year-olds. One of them already is a star. Like, hey, man, like it's not, you're not the Rockies, actually. You're not really good, but you're not the Rockies. And I don't know, you need to toe the line and you need to stay in the fight, buddy, because it sounds like everybody's off here right now.
It would also be one of those things too, that if it was like, oh, I don't really want to be here anymore, then that would be damning to the owners. You'd be protecting yourself. And I think everyone would hop on board with you, because I think we've all seen the writing on the wall for so long.
Yeah, it's been rough. All right, we'll see how it plays out. All right, talk to you tomorrow. Brand Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.